Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and we are going to, hopefully, knock on wood, finish the remaining construction steps in our Quest Terrier-Orion, which as it turns out is, I don't know if it's actually a scale model, but it is a real rocket. It looks like one. Well, apparently it is. So in any event, last we left off, we had the bottom section, fins complete, top section, fins complete. This we don't really need for the moment. We'll come back to that. The last major bit of construction we need to do, I'll move these things out of the way for the time being, is we need to attach the launch lug. So this is easy enough work. All we need to do is, I've already made a mark here at 4 inches back when I was measuring things. This needs to go just past that line. And that's easy enough to do. A little bit of glue. I am going to spread this thin with my stick here, my dowel, my scrap. But I'm not going to bother doing the 2 layers of glue because this is not, it's not going to take a lot of abuse. It's not really need it to be terribly strong. What I do need it to be is aligned, because if it's not aligned, and this is not on my first attempt, it is not going to do its job. Which, by the way, the entire purpose of the launch lug is to get the rocket through the dangerous initial moment of acceleration. The problem that you need to address in that first moment is that the fins don't really do much when they're not traveling fast. So the launch lug and the launch rod make sure that the rocket is going straight up while it is accelerating to get to the point where the fins actually accomplish something. You know, no moving air or very limited moving air of the fins means they don't do anything. So having a nice straight launch lug and launch rod means that the rocket will go straight for the first couple feet, for the first couple moments of flight, and then the fins take over and it's good to go. Alright, so I'm just looking down the barrel to make sure that this is aligned, and it's not actually quite aligned. It is a little bit crooked this way as far as I can tell, because I'm looking down the line that I drew and it does not quite appear to be straight. So I'm going to try to nudge ever so gently the top part over to my right. And that seems to pretty much done the trick. I'm also noticing that my line, while it is pretty straight, is not perfectly straight. I can see a little bit of a wobble in it. And that's fine. Alright, so launch lug looks, it's still not, that's probably a little bit better. Just double check. You really don't want to have to do this more than once. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, so that needs to dry for a little bit. While it is drying, I'm going to apply some fillets to the fins. So here we're strengthening the joint, so I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of, oops, there was bubble, don't like that. Squeeze out some glue into the crack. So I'm only going to do the top half right now. No, honestly, I should probably do the under half. The launch lug should probably get a fillet as well. The purpose of this is, well, twofold. One is definitely I want to strengthen the joint, and having this extra glue in the seam will accomplish that. The other thing is that, coincidentally and conveniently, having this glue kind of pushed into the seam makes it a little bit more aerodynamic. And being that it is a flying object, every little bit of extra aerodynamics helps. So I'm trying to make sure that, like, this is beaded up, so that's clearly not going to be a nice smooth interface. So part of what I'm doing here is smoothing things out. I'm also pushing it into the crack, and the shape of my finger is going to make the seam kind of rounded rather than the kind of sharp right angle that it is currently. Okay. And I'm only going to do half of this right now because I want the glue to be kind of forced down into gravity, by gravity, into the seam. Now this one, yeah, it's not. Oh well, it'll be fine. Put that aside. Might as well do some fillets on the top half here while we're at it. I only really let this set for like maybe an hour before I do the other ones. You could really, I mean, you could do them all at once and it wouldn't make much of a difference, but the only potential risk here is that sometimes you can get some bubbles even when you smooth it out, and they don't tend to crack for some time. You know, they have to start drying before you really notice where they are. And if you end up with a bubble, that's fine. Just put another layer of glue on, and it doesn't even need to be a full layer. You can just put some glue right on top of the hole where the bubble cracked, or burst, I guess. And chances are, you know, it might actually take a couple layers to fill the hole, but eventually it'll be patched up. Alright, so that's pretty good too. Lovely, that can go off to the side. Now, most of my construction is done. The next phase I need to do is take care of the fins, so we'll go through the grain filling procedure. But that, I want to make sure, well, I wanted to have my fillets on first before I do that, because, you know, it would be nice to not have to put glue over top of the nice finished fin. So that needs to happen first. The other things that need to get done at some point, and they don't, you know, it doesn't really matter when. The instructions call for this pretty much at the end of things, but the last major bit that I need to do is, here's the nose cone, and here is a piece of clay. I need to put the clay in the nose cone. This nose cone is a bit different from the usual Estes fare because the hook, well, the loop, the eye here, doesn't go into the nose cone. This is completely closed off. There is a little hole here for, I don't know why. I don't know if that's even supposed to be there, but there is. So somehow I need to get clay inside the nose. So the instructions call for using a hobby razor saw. Now, I do not have a razor saw. I've actually looked for them on occasion, and apparently I'm not looking in the right place. That's fine. You don't really need one. Pretty much anything you can do with a razor saw you could also do with a hobby knife. Now, if you have watched some of my other videos, you may have watched one of my not great moments where I put myself in urgent care by being stupid with a hobby knife. So here is a glove. It's like, it's not, I mean, I've always thought they were Kevlar, but they're not. It's like reinforced with really thin chainmail, kind of, almost, but it's resistant. It's cut resistant. Is it cut proof? No, but it is cut resistant, and that's probably all I really need. My little episode was a result of the hobby knife blade slipping. There wasn't a lot of force behind it, but it still did a bit of a number on my thumb, so we're going to avoid that. So glove on. I kind of wish that I would have bought one with grippies on it, but what are you going to do? Maybe if you are considering it, you will look for one with grippies, but I don't have one. So the instructions say that we would use a razor saw to cut like an opening here. I don't think I really need an opening that big. I just need an opening big enough to get a little bit of clay in there. So I'm going to try to open this a little bit. So I'm just going to try to push down a little bit and maybe spin, wedge the knife in here and cut downwards. Now I want to be careful that I don't cut, you know, out to the point where I'm cutting into the edge of the nose cone. And I don't really want to do all that much damage to this at all, one way or the other, because I don't need a lot of space in order to get my clay, let's try and get this more in frame, my clay into the nose cone. It doesn't, you know, it's clay. I can make it pretty narrow. So I'm just going to try to cut out a little, you know, to expand this ever so slightly. So this is a hole, so I can kind of arc the blade and expand the hole now that I've cut a little bit. So this is going to be an ugly, nasty little thing. I could make it neat and pretty, but honestly, I don't really see the point. this is an interior element, and it is not truly all that vital. All right, so that's bigger. You probably need it a little bit bigger, because that'd be a pretty narrow. That'd be a narrow bit of clay. Once you have this started, you can just kind of like shave down and then cut, and you should be able to expand the hole pretty easily. That might do. Let's give this a try, because truthfully, I don't want this hole to be any bigger than I need to be. The entire purpose of this is to add mass to the front of the nose, to affect the center of gravity so the rocket is more stable. But if I'm removing material from the nose cone in order to make a hole, I'm kind of like undoing all the good I was trying to do. Now, the little bit of plastic that I've cut out here doesn't weigh much, but still, the more I remove, the more I would need to add in clay. So hopefully this will fit. Anyway, this is a tiny little bit. It's not going to fit as is right now, so I'm going to preschool it up here and make myself a clay snake. So if you don't remember your preschool days, just kind of slowly roll it and spread your fingers apart as you go, and boom, clay snake. This is getting a little weak in the middle. It doesn't really matter. I prefer it not to break. Just on general. Oops, well, it broke. Oh well, that's fine. Who cares? I just want it narrow enough that it'll fit through the hole that I cut. And bingo, it does. Kind of tap it in there. That's obviously not going to get it down to where it needs to be, but it's at least clear the hole, which was my big concern there. Same deal. Okay, so it's in the nose cone. I then need to tamp it in place, and this is not a particularly big cut. Usually I would use something along this size constraints, but it's actually, I've got glue on the end, but even if I didn't, that's not going to fit. What I do have here from a previous kit is a jumbo Q-tip that I don't entirely remember why I have these, but they were in another kit, but they seem to be just about perfect. So they fit in nicely, and they are just about as long as I need them to be. Now it is kind of hard to figure out where you have the clay and where you don't. So I can actually see shadow cast. So I have extra lights on than I usually would have, and I'm using them partially to look and see where the shadow that the clay on the inside is casting. Ironically, that's not so ironic, but it's a kind of a silly approach, but that's kind of the only way I can see what's going on. And I can feel it resisting me too. I can also see, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to tamp it down. I'm actually taking it with me, which is unfortunate. I really don't want to do that. What I don't want is the thing to fall out, which is the case. So I want to do my best to gently push it in place, but also not have it stick to my stick. So I find that like short little taps tend to do best, but this is such a narrow object that is not particularly working well. So I'm going to try to focus around the outside and push it in that way. Unfortunately, I'm not really getting it, because I can see it. It's like right in here. It is not all the way into the nose cone. Maybe the Q-tip end? No, Q-tip end's not going to fit. No, that's unfortunate. A wider stick here, a wider dowel, would probably be helpful, because it would, the end of this is so narrow that it is only pushing in a very limited spot, so only part of this is going down instead of the whole thing, which is what I want. And, well, I wonder if I have any other scrap over here that might do the trick. These are all just cut pieces of balsa that I had lying around. This one's a little bit wider. Let's try the flush end. Yeah, that seems better. The Q-tip was too narrow. this feels better, but I'm somewhat limited in because it just barely fits in the hole I cut. Alright, this is definitely working better. I can feel it tamping and it's not coming back. On a related note, somebody asked me what happens if the clay breaks loose. Well, if the clay breaks loose, it's going to rattle around. And I think that's kind of the extent of the problem. It's annoying. I mean, it'll make some noise. If it falls all the way back, the worst case, I mean, it's not coming out. It's stuck in there. It is not coming out through this hole. It's too small. So instead of having the center of gravity slightly higher up here, maybe it's back here, it would affect the center of gravity, but not by a lot. I think that's kind of the end result. Ooh, boy, that's not pushed all the way in. I really need to push this more. It is not all the way in the nose cone, so I'm going to see what I can do about driving this even farther in. So I could actually see the shadow when I picked it up to do that. It was not even close. Alright. That's better. I don't think it is going to go all the way into the nose cone. I just don't feel that happening. Alright, that's probably as good as it's going to get. Looking at the shadow, it's like here. Could be a little farther, but whatever. That's good enough. Anyway, if it breaks loose, I don't think it's a real problem. It's minorly less efficient at doing its job, which is affecting the center of gravity, but it's trapped in here. It can't really do anything. And I think it might just be inevitable as you go that the clay will dry and maybe some of it will break loose. Not really a problem. Okay. That takes care of most of the construction. The only thing that I really want to do between now and when I start painting is this last little transition bit right here. It goes in between. I'm not going to put this on until everything is painted, but notice this is painted gold. I'm going to tape off the parts that, ooh, there's a little burr there. That needs to come off. Yeah, I'll cut that off. Anyway, the part with all the like ridging here, that, and I'm going to be somewhat reckless here without the glove. There we go. That needs to be painted gold. So here's a little bit of painter's tape. I'm just going to mask off the parts that are not going to be painted gold. They're both going to be interior, but I want to make sure that this fits smoothly and nicely inside. Oh, I didn't get enough tape. Oh well, get a little bit more. Might not be that bad to have multiple pieces here. Anyway, I just want this masked off nicely so that I don't have a hard time getting this part in there. If I end up painting it and this part is also gold, it may not bind as well with whatever glue I need to use. Probably I'm going to use crazy glue, I think, because it's plastic. It might not bind as well, but it also might be wider than what is ideal. And if that was the case, it would be difficult getting it into where it belongs in the first place. So I'm just going to mask this off. I'm going to paint this separately. The nose and the top of this section both need to be painted gold, so I guess I might as well mask the nose off as well. There's no harm in that. Again, if this is going to be separating, that's where the parachute's going to come out. So if that ended up getting painted too much, it could be sticky coming out, and we wouldn't want that either. This that should be fine. The nice thing about having this hole cut in here too is I can use that, but I can use some dowel and paint it like this. So in any event, I am going to paint these before or during the next session, or well, before, after, whatever. The next session I need to work on the balsa. I need to finish putting the fillets on before that happens, but it is time for the finishing steps. How exciting. Alright, so I will see you then.